Ready to soundtrack your summer? With Red Bull Summer All Day Play, you choose a playlist that fits your summer vibe the best. Are you a festival fanatic, a deep-end DJ, a road dog, or a trail mixer? Just add a song to your chosen playlist and put your summer on track. Red Bull Summer All Day Play. Red Bull gives you wings. Visit redbull.com/brightsummer ahead to learn more. See you this summer.
It's time to bring on the blooms at the Home Depot with Spring Garden Deals. Find savings on hanging baskets and flowers to brighten your backyard or any space that needs instant color. Then get everything you need to plant and protect them with low prices guaranteed on soil and mulch. Dig into Spring Garden Deals for 4 days at the Home Depot. Now through May 10th. Exclusions apply. See homedepot.com/price match for details.
Get business done with the new American Express Graphite Business Cash Unlimited card. With unlimited 2% cash back on all eligible purchases, unlimited 5% cash back on flights and prepaid hotels booked through American Express Travel Online, and a flexible spending capacity that can grow with your business, you'll have the confidence to keep building. Apply today and earn a welcome offer of $1,500 cash back after you spend $50,000 in qualifying purchases on your new card within the first 6 months of card membership. Terms apply. Learn more at go.amex/graphite.
Hey, this is Stacey David Blades with Crash and Wayward, and you're listening to the one and only Jay Scott on Hook Rocks.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Hook Rocks, the Ultimate Rock Community Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Scott. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're getting ready for Thanksgiving. At least my listeners in the U.S. are getting ready for Turkey Day. And holiday season is upon us and everyone else. Hope everyone's doing well. We are part of the Pantheon Podcast Network, great network of music-related podcasts. Got something for everybody on Pantheon Pods. You can find them at pantheonpodcast.com, as well as Twitter and Facebook, Pantheon Pods. Search them up. They've got some great podcasts like the Hangin' and Bangin' podcast with Vinny Appice and Carmen Apice, along with promoter Ron Anesti. You've got the rock historian Martin Popoff, Mistress Carrie out in Boston, Baco on Cobras and Fire, and my compadres in arms, Tom and Zeus, on Shout It Out Loudcast. So check all those out as well as all the others. Check out some of our recent episodes. We just dropped an episode with the Itch Rocks podcast, the Itch Rock Radio and podcast with Casey, Dan, and Aaron. Check out that conversation on what 2021 means to rock music. Also some great new music spotlights like Crooked Shapes that we just aired, as well as Travis McCready, from the old singer from Bishop Gunn, and also check out our 300th episode with Carrie Stevens. We have another great new music spotlight, a band that recently been on my radar. They're called Black Spiders, and I like to welcome Pete to the Hook Rocks.
Hey Jay, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Absolutely. Glad you're doing this. Thank you for coming on the show. We always start the same way every time we have a first-time guest, and that really is the essence of the show, what we're all about, which is just like every great rock song has a hook that sucks you in. Every rock fan has a moment, whether it's a song, a band, a performance, or album that hooked them on rock and roll. What was it for you?
Oh, wow. Okay. I guess it's hard to say, really. I was talking about this with somebody else the other night, and the first actual rock album that I owned myself was Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. But I'm not really sure what actually hooked me into rock music. I think more than likely TNT by AC/DC is probably the one.
What was it about that song that brought you in? And what made you, or what led you to buy the Black Sabbath album?
Well, when I was at school, I haven't got older brothers, so I didn't kind of grow up listening to rock music when I was really young. I had older sisters, so I was kind of forced to listen to whatever they were obsessed with at the time. And my friends at school that I eventually started doing bands with, their older brothers were the ones that kind of drew me into rock music. And it was quite a broad range, I guess. But I think AC/DC were kind of a staple for my friends' older brothers at that time. And I think what really brought me in on AC/DC, and especially on that track, the riffs were relentless, and Bon Scott's vocals are amazing. And I think it was just like the cheekiness of it, because there's that little the little sort of background vocals that are just kind of all the way through, just doing the oi, 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 and I think maybe that's what pulled me in.
Yeah, I remember hearing that song too, and it was so unique because you didn't hear that in any other song, right? You didn't hear this chant that goes along with the driving riff and the beat. And it was so different that it did pull you in. It was like, what is this all about? Who's this band? I remember that vividly, that it was such a unique experience when you did listen to it.
Yeah, it's true, and like the lyrics, when Bon Scott's talking about riding out on the sunset on your TV screen and stuff, like the opening lines and everything. It's just, it just sets the scene for everything, because obviously, TV was a big part of things there, like when you were young growing up, because obviously, there was not as much stuff going on there is now, like the internet and the amount of channels and things like that. And especially in the UK, it's very, the music sort of scene in the UK is very condensed, and it's very, but it's so, like, the breadth of, like, the type of music that you're, conditioned to while living here is probably quite different to a lot of places, really.
Yeah.
And like as I was kind of getting into music to buying myself, I'd kind of grew up sort of listening to like a lot of like sort of punk, post-punk and punk stuff. Like, so it wasn't obviously, it wasn't in the height of when punk was huge in the UK or anything like that. So we're talking like the early 80s or whatever, and basically, like the Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath album. I've been talking about this album that I had by Stiff Little Fingers, like a live album called Hanks. And my best mate at school at the time was kind of really intrigued by it. So he said, "Okay, I tell you what, I'll bring a vinyl into school, and you bring that, and we'll swap it, and then we can exchange notes and what have you." And that was it, really. So I brought the Stiff Little Fingers album in for him, and he brought in Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, and that's pretty much how it went from there, really, and kind of drew me into actually probably more than ever wanting to actually be in a band, I think.
Where did it go from there in terms of wanting to get on stage, wanting to be in a band, wanting to perform?
Well, we knew, this guy that I swapped he was my best mate at school, and I'd really been always been interested in like playing drums, and so I started getting taught how to play drums at school, and apparently I was a fast learner, and before I knew it, my best mate was the singer, I was the drummer. We had another guy from our school who was in the same year as us, who was playing lead guitar. And then there was like an older guy that they knew that lived in the village where they lived that played bass. And he was obsessed with Kiss. And so we kind of just started, rehearsing songs in like a village hall, on the weekends. And we'd like learn pretty much, like the basic songs really. So, I mean, I guess they were easy to learn AC/DC songs and Kiss songs at that time, and like before we progressed on to other things, and that's kind of how it all started, really. I'd missed out on seeing Kiss in makeup and stuff at the time, and I remember my friends bunking off school to go and see them play in the UK when they came over. Probably one of the last tours they did before they took their makeup off for the first time or whatever, and I kind of regretted that I didn't bunk off school as well to go and see the gig. So that's kind of where it all started, really.
As far as writing music and hearing a song that inspired you to instead of playing the riffs that you knew to develop your own music, was there a moment for that too as well?
I mean, very probably. I mean, I think I was like when I left school, I played in lots of bands with the same bass player that I was playing drums with at school, and we kind of progressed into being into other sort of like rock bands that were a little bit more intricate and things. And I think it was probably at that point that I sort of, because my sisters were very musical, so they had like we had a piano at home and they had guitars and stuff, and I kind of knew a few things, and I'd learnt a few chords, and I think at one point I'd sort of, I mean, I don't really remember the song to be honest, but I'm sure I kind of wrote a song at that point in time, but it wasn't really until later on when I kind of left the drums behind and just became a singer that I'd started kind of looking at songs, but still at the same time, I was writing songs with the guitarist that I was in the band with. I'd not actually sort of been writing fully formed songs of my own, particularly with guitar and everything else. But as Black Spiders started, I guess I'd had a bit more experience at that point in time. So. Yeah. Was
there a way, when you're approaching music, approaching lyrics and writing that stuff, being a singer, was there a influence in your writing style and in terms of, writing about personal experience, writing about observation, writing about what maybe a friend may be going through? How did you develop that in terms of your artistry?
That's another tough question, Jay. I'm really not sure. I think sometimes I don't think I've written that many songs that have been pretty much straight to the point. A lot of the songs are kind of based in allegories, which obviously are like, stories within stories. So then, it's like, because sometimes they're based on stories that I've heard from other people's experiences of things, and I kind of just try to kind of maybe put my own tip on that of where my experience has been with that. So yeah, I mean, I think particularly like the writing style for Black Spiders has always been sort of not very straightforward insofar as, I'm sort of writing a song about a particular person or whether it's actually coming from me. So sometimes it's in the third person. And but like Stabbed in the Back, for instance, which, obviously caught your interest, is, I guess, it was kind of like a collective thing. Like when we were writing the latest album, which, mainly happened through the lockdown in the UK from the pandemic. I just wanted to kind of convey what a lot of people have probably been through, and kind of, that feeling of like everybody's been fucked over like once in their life, and kind of, I kind of feel that it's happened to me more than once. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of straightforward, but in a way, it's not particularly from personal experience, if you know what I mean. Obviously, I think I'm just contradicting myself massively there, but it's very hard. I mean, I think from the stance of where I come from with lyrics and things, it's not pained. It's not pained from my soul or anything like that. Really, it's more like from people watching in a way.
Perspective, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly that. And it's and then a lot of the other Black Spider songs are more like boys' own stories, like from when you were younger, when you used to read comics or magazines about superheroes, or like or you'd read books about like Robin Hood or Vikings or pirates or whatever. It's kind of all I guess kind of from that kind of feeling of things, and maybe putting yourself in that position, and so I guess from perspective is like from whose perspective is really the key. I mean, I'm not 100% sure if it's all my perspective.
As far as the album goes, the self-titled new album from Black Spiders, the new single Stabbed in the Back came out on November 12th. Putting this album together, a lot of different circumstances happening around all of us.
Oh, yeah.
Was it difficult to make this album? Was it easier to find that bubble to make an album and kind of tune everything out? What was the process like for this latest effort by you guys?
Well, Jay, that's a great question. I mean, the thing is, it was like to be bluntly honest, it was a lot easier than it's ever been. To be fair, I mean, the thing is, obviously we were in lockdown. We just decided to get back together in the summer of 2019, and then myself and Ozzy, the guitarist, had kind of started getting together and kind of going over some of the ideas that we'd had. And then, like, within a month or so, like, we were all in lockdown here. And so the creative process has already started. And, like, we were very positive about the fact that we were going to make a new album. And, like, previously, it had always been like we'd always written the songs, or someone had an idea and we'd taken it into the rehearsal room, and then we thrashed it out as a song and like kind of beat it to death until there was, like what was going to make the song in the studio, basically. Whereas this was a completely different approach, and it served us really well in a way, because we wrote so much material, it kind of blew our minds a little bit, like the amount of material that we'd actually written for the record, and the quality of it was very good too. And well, from our own standpoint, I guess. Because you could actually focus on it, and with technology of being able to kind of demo up the songs on GarageBand and then email them across to each other, and then so I'd kind of maybe if I had a song idea, I'd get an acoustic guitar out or whatever, and I'd kind of I'd record it on my voice messenger on my phone or something, depending where I was in the house or whatever, instead of having to set up any kind of equipment, and just basically write, like put the riffs down or whatever, and maybe in some kind of arrangement, and then send it to Ozzy, and then he would kind of redo it on his own guitar into GarageBand. And then try and maybe put some drums on it, and then send it back to me, and then I put the vocals on it, and then it gets sent around to the bass player, and then the drummer as well, and then like the good thing as well is that our drummer had an electronic kit set up that he'd been using, so he was able to actually record his own drum parts. So he wanted the little demo. So before we actually got into the studio, we'd have like a demo that we'd all actually played on, but not actually played together. So it was a completely different process. And the thing is, we've already started recording our next album, and because the process works so well for us in terms of the amount of songs, the quality of songs, and how it had brought, it reinvigorated us so much. About being in a band and wanting to do Black Spiders and just getting out there, that we just continue to do it. Really, I mean, we never stopped writing. We just had to take a break while we were figuring out what we were going to play live, and the record was coming out. And so now we're actually back in the studio doing exactly the same thing that we did during the pandemic. Because it worked so well, and it was such a different way of doing things for us, but it works, and I think that's how things are going to be for us moving forward, really.
Discovering how easy it can be, and discovering maybe new techniques of recording, did that add a new life in the band when not much is going on at that point, right? I mean, you're trying to look for something positive because you can't play out, you can't, do any shows. You're pretty much on hold doing everything, and that's frustrating for a band that relies on those shows to, make a living. And here you are developing a new way that maybe is easier for you to make music in the future. Was that a silver lining for you guys? Was that something to really hold on to? Is hey, listen. This may be bad now, but long term, this is really going to help us.
Well, yeah, because at the time, I mean, it's a total silver lining. I mean, it was like, it was the best gift in a way, because I'm not really sure we would have been so prolific in with the writing and stuff if there wouldn't have been a lockdown for us to actually be able to focus on things and kind of not get distracted by other things that go on in life, really. I mean, and, for us, we understood that the way things were going, music was currency for bands, because going out and playing any gigs, seemed like it could be such a long way off. And, and even now, even though, gigs are kind of happening, still, there's it's still not what it used to be like, because, people are still wary of going out, and, the virus is still around, and, and it's just difficult. And a lot of the grassroots venues have closed down, or, or have gone into liquidation or whatever, and just aren't there anymore. And so we realized that it was probably going to be the saving thing for the band, really, is that because we could all express lots of different things into the music, and not actually be stuck in a situation where, we just ended up being at home doing a lot of DIY, which I guess, a lot of people ended up doing. So, we actually had a, an artistic outlet, if you will. And I guess we flourished in that kind of situation, and it's it's kind of, it's spilt over into what it is now. That some of the restrictions are out, and people are allowed to be out and about, and gigs are going again and stuff. But yeah, it's still, we're still we still thank our lucky stars that like it happened when it did, because maybe we wouldn't have been able to have kind of had that amount of music, like come out of us in that sort of time, really.
Well, you can't argue with the success. I mean, you guys, independent album chart, number 7. I mean, top 10 album, coming out of a pandemic, coming out of those restrictions. I don't think the term paid off is the right one, but you definitely took advantage of the circumstances and made them be the best it could possibly be.
Yeah, I mean, well, it was such a horrible and negative situation for like everybody to be in, really, and so finding any kind of positive in it, like for us has just been great, really, yeah.
As far as writing this album, the lyrical content, the mood of the album, did you find yourself being affected by what was happening around you? Is this the atypical Black Spiders album, or did you feel like it had a little bit more of a moody tone, or the lyrics were a little bit more, introspective, in terms of what was happening? Did you find yourself being affected by it in that way?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, well, for me, it was quite hard for a while, because I have like 2 little boys who live in London, and I live in the north of England now. And basically, I didn't actually get to see them for like 3 months or more, which was really quite painful. And because it was a lockdown, I'm kind of living on my own, and it was very, I mean, you could almost get cabin fever with that, like that, like the kind of, I guess, that kind of life. Yeah, I think, I think there was a lot of introspection and looking at certain things, and thinking of different themes for songs, and like really kind of, I guess a lot of the lyrics are like were really thought out of, like, because of the attitudes of the actual music in the songs. I mean, some of the songs kind of came together, so almost like, like the riff came with the singing pretty much at the same time. But some of the songs, it was the music came first, and then a melody came, and then a lyric kind of sprung to mind of what it was. But it really, I think I really dug deep for a lot of the lyrics on this album, for sure.
You mentioned also too that you wrote a lot of material. You're still writing a lot of material. Yeah, how do you balance that in terms of, because let me kind of back up a little bit. We do live in a day and age where you constantly have to be putting music out to stay in front of an audience, because the audience is, their attention span is much different now than it was years ago. You put out a song on a Friday, and by Tuesday they're on to the next best thing. You're going to develop a fan base, and that's always great. But to capture new fans, I think bands have to go above and beyond and work so much harder now, because there's so many things pulling people in different directions. Writing a lot of music is great. How do you balance releasing that music, touring, getting out in front of people, and releasing more music, and having that cycle affect you as a band and as an artist?
Well, I think previously, like before this album, with the albums prior that we released, we kind of got stuck in that old way of thinking with, writing the album, recording the album, waiting to put the album out at the right time, then going on, the touring circuit, and then, seeing if there's any more, if there's any more to squeeze out of that album before you move on to like maybe writing and recording the next one. And, there was like a period of like 4 years gap between the debut, the debut album and our second album, and not really like that it's intentional at the moment for us to actually be, releasing an album this year and then already recording the next album before the end, before the year's out. I think it's just that we're not sure how many more, how much gigging opportunity is going to be out there, between now and next summer. And so music is like I said before, like music has kind of become a currency for bands. And because we're just kind of moving forward and trying to find new ways of doing things and like new ways of getting music out. And if we've got lots of music, then we'll probably put music out on different platforms before it's actually released like properly and things like that. You have got to keep people entertained and kind of involved and kind of, and you're almost trying to make sure that you're kind of keeping your audience while trying to and trying to keep trying to reach out to a further audience. Whereas before it was more about growing an audience because you could go out and it was a bit more, I guess, organic in a way. But, now it's very much, people want things immediately. And like you say, before you know it, after a week, you could be at the back of their minds because something else is an earworm in their head. So yeah, it's very difficult. But I think what we just thought was, we're doing the music, and we're able to go and record at our leisure, kind of with the producer that we've used from the very beginning, and it just seems like it's it's the way forward for us, really, because I think that's probably why we decided to take a break before, is because things got a little bit stagnant, and and we did a bit too much overthinking about the music and about where we were going as a band. Whereas I think now we've kind of realized like what sort of band we are, and that kind of makes us focus more on what we're going to deliver to people, really. And like I said before, and you were talking about that we've written a lot of music, and it's not like we kind of wrote 20 odd songs and then said, right, okay, let's do these. Basically, we started recording them as we were going, and we were thinking, right, okay, we've got 4 songs. These 4, these 3 are sort of finished. Let's get these in the studio. And then, even in the studios, like the songs from the demos kind of take on a little bit more of an extra dimension, because, you're focusing on backing vocal parts, you're focusing on other little bits like percussion and stuff or whatever, and all these little things that kind of make songs a lot better. And then, obviously, like you say, the hook, you're looking for that hook in each song, and sometimes you don't see it until you're actually in the studio properly, and then it'll come to you, and you know which bit needs to be focused on the most to make to make the best songs, really. And it was Ozzy, the other guitarist in the band, that kind of sort of said, well, if we're going to make a new album, each album needs to kind of pretty much kick you in the face, and so that's what we were going for, really. So they were the songs that we picked that made that album, that new self-titled album.
When you talk about putting together shows for next year, and not knowing the amount of shows you're going to do, is that because there's still restrictions in the UK, and you're still not on solid ground yet when it comes to that?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, we were meant to do an album tour for this album in July, but because of the restrictions about being in contact with somebody that had tested positive, we had to cancel the tour, which was a bit of a huge blow, really. and then we couldn't because so many concerts have been cancelled and rescheduled like year after year over the last couple of years now. Everybody's sort of pretty much fighting for a place to try and get a gig, and so when we tried to reschedule the July dates for November, we could only actually reschedule 2 of them because the venues just didn't have the space to make it work as a fluid tour, really. So we just had to go with brand new shows, for November, because we've got a tour starting next week. And 2 of those shows have even been cancelled because some of the restrictions have kind of made it difficult. And so it's an ongoing thing, really. And who knows what might happen next year? I mean, like in a lot of other countries in Europe, they're just they're like COVID, like the COVID cases are going back up again, and they're kind of having restrictions come in, and some countries are closing the borders off, and it's just. We just don't know what might happen, really. It's just one of those things. You got to kind of, I think we've got to take it day by day. So, we're trying to book some festivals in for next year, for next summer. But other than that, we're really not sure what we can get in the time that we need to and when we can. So it's very difficult.
Under that premise, when you're there's so much unknown with what's happening, and you're making music. Are there moments where it's difficult to see that light of the tunnel? Like you're making music, you're proud of the music you're making. I mean, the album is doing well, and yet playing live is so much. There's so much uncertainty with touring. I mean, I think you guys are doing a show. I don't know if it's a one-off or a tour with Massive and then Revival Black. But is that frustrating when you're making music, or is the music part of the healing to keep you focused and occupied rather than dwell on what's happening, the negative what's happening?
Well, yeah, we can't dwell on the fact that we can't actually get out and do as many shows as we want to when we can, because obviously we can't, we're not really in that position where we can go out and just tour whenever, really. We have to kind of, it has to, the logistics of it all has to work properly. And it is quite difficult, but, we know that the music will be the savior for us in the end, because, if and when things actually get back to some kind of normality, and we can actually go out and maybe even do a tour outside of the UK, because that's another thing as well, is we can't. Europe has already been made difficult because of Brexit for touring bands, and the fact that so many different European countries have got so many different restrictions, and they're going in and out and up and down because of their health service being at breaking point. It's very difficult to go out and actually look at how we can go out and tour the album in different territories, which is a shame, really. So, I mean, but on the brighter side of that, when things do get back to some kind of better normality, at least, it just means we'll have more songs to play, better song, like more songs to choose from that people will have heard more, because there's more platforms to get their songs out there than just going out and playing live. Playing live will probably turn into, a bit more of a happening or an event, because, for us, we kind of learned our lesson before, I think, because we used to go out and tour all the time, and and it was great up to a certain point where, people, I guess, we kind of get the feeling that people thought they could, if they miss Black Spiders this month, they're sure to catch us somewhere else next month. So we kind of wanted to, sort of boil that down a little bit and kind of make it a little bit more, if we're going to go out and do some touring in November, you probably won't see us again until May, kind of thing, So come out and see the band, sort of thing. And if by after this tour in November, once we've got the new record finished, which will probably be in the early part of next spring, by the time we go out and do any of these festivals, including the one at Stone Dead with Massive and Revival Black, we'll probably have like maybe brand new singles out that will be coming out off the next album. So so the set will be either it'll be getting longer and longer, or we'll just have to be kicking out some songs to put other songs in. But at the same time, it's you've got to progress. We can't just sit back and just play all the stronger songs off the first album and then maybe a couple of songs off the later albums. I don't think that's good for anybody, really.
Well, especially now that you have an album that's charted, number 7
Sure.
on the independent. I mean, that's a huge deal. And is this album, what you thought, or the response to it? Is that what you thought it was going to be? I mean, having a top 10 album under the situation that everyone's currently in, that's a big, huge accomplishment, and that's something that can really be advantageous for you.
Yeah, well, it kind of blew our minds a little bit. To be fair, I mean, we were hoping that people would not have forgot us, because obviously, maybe you're not aware, Jay, but like we kind of went on hiatus for a little bit in 2017. We kind of went on hiatus for a little bit. So when we decided we were going to do another record, we wanted it to have the same impact that the first album seemed to have had, which got people really excited. Even though the first album maybe didn't hit into the charts, we know we sold a lot of it. And so we were just hoping that, it would maybe make the same impact musically on people that the first record did. And, and I think we achieved the goal, really, and maybe even surpassed that with getting a chart placing and what have you. And, yeah, it seems to be really good. So, we just kind of want to keep that momentum going, and just deliver the best music that we can, and the best albums, and the best shows, and what have you, while we can, and when we can, really.
When you look back at your career, I mean, you released some singles, and you had the first album that came out in 2011. You also had some EPs come out prior to that. As you're evolving as artists, as you're evolving as a band, someone like me comes along and says, "Oh wow, Black Spiders! I've never heard of this band." So they're like new to me. Is that okay with you guys? Is that something that you want to be recognized for your whole body of work? Or are you okay of people still considering a new band at this point?
Well, I mean, this is one of the reasons, that we kind of wanted to kind of work with, we're working with new people on this record. We've got a new press person, we've got a new radio plugger. We don't think we've reached everybody that we kind of think might be Black Spiders fans. So for us, anybody liking any of the Black Spiders back catalogue or new songs, or any song, whether it's a really random track off one of the EPs, or something like that, it's like, for us, it's just welcome on board, the good shit Black Spiders, basically.
Yeah, I mean, there's people that still consider a band like Rival Sons a new band. And they've been out since, I think, 2010, 2011, around the same time you guys were forming too. So it really is. And I think that also speaks to where rock and roll was 10 years ago to where it is now. For the past decade or so, decade and a half, 2 decades, it's really taken a back seat to a lot of other genres. And now because there's so much great new music coming out, the resurgence is causing people to find these bands that have been around for a while. It's very similar to like the early 80s, you know, when you had bands like Van Halen reaching the peak of their career and the Sunset Strip having all these bands. And then all of a sudden you hear this band Judas Priest that's been out since the mid 70s, you know, or, you know, Maiden that, you know, has been doing stuff since late 70s, early 80s. So, you know, it's kind of that same thing where a lot of times when newer bands come out and they start connecting with people, people naturally then look back of what's been going on before that, and they find some really great music.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, we're hoping that, you know, this basically we knew we kind of were starting again, really. And, you know, we still all really mean it, you know, like we really like mean that we want to be in a band, and we really mean that we want to kind of convey certain things, you know, across in music. I guess as artists or whatever. And we just knew we kind of had to make some kind of impact, because, you know, we didn't want people to think that we'd just kind of fallen by the wayside and we're just ambling along, really. You know, we kind of feel, you know, like we should be, you know, we still are competing with not just, you know, newer rock bands like, you know, like Rival Sons, you know, and a lot of the other new bands that are out there. We're competing with all the new music that's coming out, and so, you know, you have to kind of realize that, you know, maybe there's going to be a lot of disappointment, but as long as you're giving it 100% all the time, then, you know, you can't really kind of complain that you haven't, you know, that you haven't given it your all. And so hopefully it's almost like taking two steps back to take a bigger leap forward. And you know, and we're kind of hoping that because now people sort of know that we're back, that, you know, we can take a bigger leap forward with the next record, really. You know, but we'll see how all that goes, because, you know, obviously we didn't know the pandemic was around the corner, so who knows what's around the corner next that might kind of, you know, throw a spanner in the works. But we'll see. You know, I mean, we're hopeful that, you know, that Black Spiders will be bigger, and our reach will become bigger. You know, and our whole, I guess, our whole brand, as it were, will probably be, you know, taken further.
Well, Pete, it's been a great conversation. Thank you very much for appearing on the Hook Rocks. I really enjoyed the talk. Really enjoyed learning more about you and the band. Thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, thank you, Jay. It's really been a pleasure, mate. Anytime.
Absolutely, man. The new album is out, the self-titled album by Black Spiders. The new single is out November 12th, and it's called Stabbed in the Back. Thank you, Pete, for coming on the Hook Rocks. I'm Jay Scott. Be safe, everybody. Take care of each other, and we will talk again soon. Thanks.
Cheers, man. Take care.
Will be mine. Oh, Mary, Mary, wanna be with you. And this is what I'm gonna do. Got to put a call to you, 'cause I feel good tonight. Everything's gonna be right. I'm gonna have a good time tonight. Rock and roll music's gonna play all night. Come on, baby, it won't take long.
can't reason with the sun. Trust us, we've tried. This summer, it's time to put that angry ball of fire on mute. Columbia's Omni-Shade technology is engineered to protect you from the sun's harsh rays that can burn and damage your skin. The sun is relentless, but so is our gear. Level up your summer at Columbia.com to spend more time outside and less time slathering on aloe lotion. You're welcome. Columbia, engineered for whatever.
300 Favorite Albums with James Campion.
I don't think there's an album I know better front to back. I learned how to play guitar to a lot of these songs.
If I could pick one record to hand someone and say this is what it feels like to be a woman, it would be this record.
You know, the engineer that was recording the album for us was a novice engineer. He was really the janitor.
First half of these sessions for the album were totally improvisatory in the sense that they went into the studio and just dealt with whatever happened.
There was space that was left for these listeners to kind of discover it for themselves. That they would say, yeah, my parents listened to it, but I had to build my own relationship to it.
Happiness, good living, peace, love, rock and roll. I just feel like this album is such a wonderful translation of that concept.
People understood they were in a world historical moment, and it felt like it was going to last forever. In fact, the infinite spaces that they explored in The Giant Now is part of what made that explosion so huge.